Now, since TV shows have a longer lifespan than movies, it can be much easier for the audience to get attached to the main cast. You spend a lot of time learning about their lives, their motives, and in general, their unique personalities. This is why when the show comes to its inevitable end, you want to see your favorite characters succeed and achieve a happy ending. Well, when it comes to horror shows, happy endings are pretty much a rare commodity, and even if some of the characters manage to survive long enough to get one, there are still going to be some unfortunate victims along the way whose deaths will surely tug at your heartstrings. And what we're talking about today are the TV shows that basically just said, nah, nobody gets a happy ending, everybody dies. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 horror TV shows where everyone dies in the end. Number 8, Dead Set. If you were told that there was a zombie TV series taking place on the set of Big Brother without knowing about Dead Set, you would probably think it was some sort of dark comedy in a similar vein to Shaun of the Dead, right? Well, as it turns out, Dead Set is not only super intense, but also incredibly depressing. The show was always full of brutal and nerve-wracking encounters with the undead, but the series finale managed to crank its levels of brutality to the absolute maximum. The series ends with the mansion being overrun by the zombie horde, which kill every single character you've grown to love or care for over the course of the show, one by one. The scene where hero Kelly convinces Space to let her out of the diary room, hoping to make a run for it only so that she can get immediately swarmed by the horde, is so shockingly bleak. It goes to show you how hopeless their fight for survival was from the very beginning. And to add more salt to your tears, the final shot of the episode shows zombie Space and Kelly looking at each other through the camera. Number 7, Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass is a captivating horror story about the isolated community of Crockett Island, which begins to experience all kinds of supernatural phenomena after the arrival of a mysterious priest. The show's finale is fiery and gruesome, but also oddly heartwarming, and not just because of the flames. By episode 7, the entire population of Crockett Island has either been killed or turned into vampires, save for the few survivors who want to prevent the monsters from ever leaving the island. Father Paul's flock falls under the control of the fanatical Bev, who wants to burn down the island but leave the church and the recreation center to shelter the vampires from sunlight. The survivors try to destroy the buildings but ultimately fail and get killed. Their sacrifice is not in vain, however, as it awakens something in the undead congregation that quickly turn against Bev. Consequently, the people burn down the church and the rec center and then prepare themselves for the upcoming sunrise, singing in unison. In the end, only 2 kids, Lisa and Warren, survive the island's destruction by escaping on Warren's boat, and their departure means that Crockett Island will forever remain an empty and destroyed ghost town. Number 6, Shiki. In terms of its premise, Shiki shares a few similarities with Midnight Mass. Both shows are about isolated communities becoming breeding grounds for vampires, and both of them end up with their communities being burned down completely when the tensions between the living and the undead reach their climax. But the main difference between the shows is that here, the show actually tries to make its audience sympathize with the vampires a little bit. The townfolk turned into the titular Shiki are shown to have retained most of their human qualities, and they appear to only just want to survive in this world, just like the rest of the town. This is why when the Shiki's existence becomes exposed and the humans decide to kill them all, the carnage that ensues hits the viewer especially hard. Pretty much every single scene during the burning down of the town of Sotaba shows its vampiric citizens getting staked, burned, and even tortured by their own family members. At the end of the final episode, we see Saishin and Tsunako driving away from the carnage. Though they make it out of the town with their own lives, the town's destruction is a clear sign that they can never escape humanity's wrath. Number 5, Strangers from Hell. Strangers from Hell is a brilliant Korean thriller about a young man living in a dormitory with a cast of strange neighbors, all of whom seem to be hiding a dark secret. The show does an amazing job of portraying the issues of modern Korean society, exposing the pressure it exudes on its poor and destitute members, all while delivering a truly tense and disturbing story with a twist that is sure to blow anyone's mind. The story of the main character, Yoon Yong-woo, was bound to end with murder and death, but no one expected that it would be him who would be killing his creepy neighbors. Well, to be fair, the show was building up to this moment, leaving plenty of clues as to why he would become an unhinged killer. We see how much he is struggling with his past and how nobody in the present seems to treat his concerns seriously. And this is why ultimately he falls for Moon Yo's brainwashing, and why he ends up killing the psychotic dentist along with his neighbors. The show pulls off an incredible twist by revealing that it was the protagonist that was the killer all along, all the while delivering an important but very disturbing message. Number 4, The Terror Season 1. The Terror is a brilliant retelling of the tragic events of the Arctic expeditions of the HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, which mixes the real-life events of the expedition with supernatural occurrences to create a one-of-a-kind psychological thriller. Now, those that have watched the series finale might say that when compared to the historical events and the novel, the show's kill count is actually missing one person. After all, the captain is shown to be alive in the final shot. However, given the narrative of the Terror and how it showcases that the British explorers' arrogance and trust in technology ultimately led to their demise, the new life to which the captain adapts to after all of his crew is gone feels like a death scene all its own. As the sole survivor of the tragedy, the captain acknowledges the error of his and his men's ways. He ultimately chooses to abandon his old life, and the final scene is meant to show you that what was left of him gave way to a completely different man. And the words of the translator in the final scene only confirm this, which are, "Tell them we are gone." Number 3. Supernatural. Supernatural is a cult dark fantasy television series that aired for a whopping 15 years, and although it certainly lost much of its initial fear factor throughout its incredibly long lifespan, it certainly didn't diminish its fans' attachment to the main cast. And after 15 seasons and 327 episodes, the series finally came to an end in 2020, delivering an incredibly emotional conclusion to the story of Sam and Dean. By the end of the series, all of the Winchester family are gone. Sam and Dean's relatives have long since fallen victim to demons that they were fighting, and eventually Dean suffers the same fate. Well, he actually died several times throughout the show, but this one somehow managed to stick with him permanently. Dean gets impaled by a vampire, leaving Sam distraught. Eventually, however, Sam learns to move on and starts a new family of his own. At the end of the final episode, Sam is old and on his deathbed, and when he finally draws his last breath, we see him appear in heaven to finally reunite with his brother. Number 2. Death Note. It shouldn't come as a surprise that in an anime like Death Note, the main cast of characters didn't really have a huge chance of surviving. If there's one message that the show has tried to highlight the most, is that every choice has its consequences. Now, Death Note follows the life of Light Yagami, a brilliant young man who, after acquiring the titular Death Note, which allows him to kill anyone whose name is written into the book, becomes a justice-obsessed vigilante known to the rest of the world as Kira. Throughout this series, Light comes across many people trying to expose him as Kira, including his arch-nemesis L, and acquires a handful of allies to help him carry out his mission. By the end of all things, all of his allies are 6 feet under, and Light shares their fate shortly after, as the Death God who he's been using like a puppet uses the Death Note against him. Right up until his very last moment, Light believes he's outsmarted everyone, but his death immediately shows him that in the end, he was really just a puppet of more sinister forces. Light dies alone, and his legacy dies with him. Shortly after his death, his last remaining companion, his fiancée, is seen standing on the ledge of a building, implying that she's about to kill herself. And number 1, American Horror Story, Murder House. Now, the early seasons of American Horror Story are where the show was truly at its peak. The first season, Murder House, set an alarmingly terrifying tone for the entire series, in fact. Murder House follows the story of the Harmons after they moved to Los Angeles. They're trying to get a fresh start after a traumatic miscarriage, but much to their continued dismay, their lives change only for the worse. The family has to deal with hauntings, violent break-ins, and plenty of murders as their whole world slowly falls apart. By the end of the season, all of the Harmons are dead, their souls forever trapped in the Murder House. Their family of ghosts decides to act as guardians of the house to prevent any more deaths from happening there. And at that point, you could think that the Harmons' fate is maybe not so bad, especially seeing as they are even shown happily celebrating Christmas together. But unfortunately for them, even death couldn't keep them away from Tate. On top of that, the only thing that's left of their time in the house is a literal spawn of Satan. So yeah, one to avoid on Airbnb, that one. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 horror TV shows where everyone dies in the end. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Or you can swing by Instagram where it's the same handle, and I hope to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you treat yourself well with love and respect, my friend, because even though we spoke about horror shows where everyone dies at the end, I want to end this video with a big dose of positivity, a smack right in the face of the good stuff. So big love to you, my friend. Hope you're smashing your life goals today, and just treat yourself well, because you bloody well deserve it. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.